Greetings! Welcome to Terra Prime Live. Darth Anonymous coming to you from Terra Prime headquarters. This is our weekly hangout webcast on everything sabering. This week we have, of course, Star Wars Days happening on Sunday, May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. So we have just decided to go ahead and do something that we feel very natural doing, and I think probably people that watch our show feel natural doing, and just kind of nerd out on Star Wars. Lots of great stuff to be nerding out on if you are a Star Wars fan now. So it's a very good time to be a Star Wars fan. So we'll get right to it. On the panel this evening, we have a good panel, as we have been lately having. First up, we have Ed Artorias Vidno. How you doing, Ed? Nope. You just muted yourself.
I unmuted. Muted now. I'm here, and I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. All right. And next up, one of our apprentices, you know him as Count Arcanus. Gary, how you doing, Gary?
I'm doing great, thank you, Master. I'm really happy to be here as well.
Excellent, excellent. And Master Nero, Jared, how's it going?
Always going well over here.
Awesome, awesome. Very good. So, God, where to begin? There's so much stuff. Obviously, I think probably if we go in reverse chronological order, the big thing on everybody's minds right now is is Episode 7 and the recent revelation of the new cast. So, sounds like might be a good place to start. Does anybody have anything to start with that? Anybody have any particular opinions on any of the cast? I mean, obviously we know that many of the old people are returning, so that's really good. But then the new people, I will confess, I don't know many of the new people, except for of the new cast, except for Andy Serkis and Max von Sydow, who I'm very excited to see how he's going to pop up in it. But yeah, as far as the other ones, any opinions out there?
I'm really glad that the old cast members are actually just going to be playing a small part, because all of them except for Harrison Ford look like they're on life support continuously anymore. So I'm not sure I would want to see Leia in any kind of bikini. I was actually joking with my fiance about this the other day, and she said maybe we could get her a metal one-piece.
Yeah.
That might not work out. I don't know anything about the new actors. Everybody's excited. I'm actually trying to bury my head in the sand with this stuff because I want to go to the movie and just sit back and go, oh, that's all I want. So, my take.
I like it because since I don't know many of the actors, I'm excited about it because the people will be fresh. I'll really be able to kind of get into it, very much like when I was young and seeing the first Star Wars trilogy. And like I said, I know 3 people in the new cast. One of them, I forget their name. Andy Serkis, of course, from the Lord of the Rings and lots of stuff nowadays. And Max von Sydow, of course, The Exorcist. I mean, he's played so many things. He was the knight who defeated the devil in the Seventh Seal, Hour of the Wolf, all that big Bergman stuff. That might be a little over people's heads. He was in Needful Things. he's in so much great stuff. He's going to be a great addition, I think, to the whole thing because just a fantastic actor. And there's a kid in there who is a kid. I don't know how old he is, but he was a kid when I saw him in this incredible movie that I think everybody should go out and see called Attack the Block. Have any of you heard of this or seen this? It's a British flick about kind of really, really low-income ghetto kids in London when an alien invasion happens. And so it's a completely different take on what would happen during an alien invasion doing that, because you're looking at some, really, really poor, really, really violent, rough gang-oriented building. Growing up, or not growing up, but living in Chicago during my college years, we had a place like that, Cabrini Green, so that went in there. So all really cool. I mean, all of those people are very cool actors, so I know that. Gary, you got any opinions on any of the new cast or of the cast announcements?
Well, to be honest, I mean, I'm not because I'm not a huge moviegoer myself. I'm not particularly familiar with any of them, with the exception of Max von Sydow, who I am so, like yourself, I'm so pleased to see him there. I've seen him in some other things other than the things you mentioned. I mean, he of course, I mean, for me, I think the first thing I saw him in was playing Ming the Merciless in Flash Gordon, which was a really silly movie, but my goodness, does he play a good baddie? Uh, so I mean, I'd be very interested to see what sort of a role he gets, whether he gets the kind of the sort of the sort of military man, or whether he gets the kind of the old sort of sage, or whether he just gets to be a bad guy, really. I don't know. I mean, I think him being in there is fantastic. It's interesting that we've got Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, and Harrison Ford back again. Funnily enough, I saw on social media the last couple of weeks, somebody posted a picture of Mark Hamill as he is now. He doesn't look that bad, actually, to be honest. I mean, I don't know how old the picture is, but I think he's supposed to be like 63 years old or something. And I remember reading a report that Carrie Fisher apparently has been getting into shape. So, even if they get a relatively small role, it's nice that, they're not going to be walking on sort of cinema frames. Uh,
Well, yeah, I mean,
that wouldn't be good.
yeah, I saw those same pictures, and I saw a picture of Carrie Fisher too, an updated picture of Carrie Fisher, and she definitely does look thinner. And you look at those two actors at that age, and you go, they're definitely in that cast, because you're not going to do that much work for for nothing unless you're going in front of.
No way. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, yeah. As I say, the others I don't know. But one weird thing was looking at because of course whenever they put these kind of things out, you get the sort of the little headshots of all the different people, and just looking at them, it was amazing how many of them could have been characters from the EU, which is probably something we'll get onto later. But
Oh yeah.
that was kind of something that struck me. Was you've got the guy with the sort of collar length black hair, you've got the girl with the long brown hair, and the guy with the sort of short light brown hairdo. I just thought, I see, I see possibilities there. So yeah, that was kind of fun.
All right. Okay, now maybe. Oh, good. He's going back here. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, Jared. How about you? Any thoughts on the new cast?
Like you, I didn't really recognize a lot of the names. Pretty much Andy Serkis and Max von Sydow were the two that kind of stuck out in my mind. I know I had seen a couple. I read some articles that said, this person's been in such and such. So I was like, okay, well that's, it doesn't really give me any information on them. So, I mean, like anything, when I see casting, I'm always, I don't know, kind of like slow to judge, because I've seen casting and been like, no, that's stupid, that's the dumbest thing ever, and then it comes out, the Dark Knight, we all said Heath Ledger, what? Like, why is Heath Ledger the Joker? And then it's just like, no, you're an idiot. That's an amazing, and he ended up doing a great job with it. And it's just one of those things. I kind of just drop my expectations at the door, and I'm trying to do the same thing as Ed, trying to like just not jump to any conclusions, go with whatever, and kind of wait to see how it turns out, because we'll see. There was actually a rumor for a while there that I hope is kind of like semi-true. I mean, they didn't announce it immediately, but there was a big rumor that Benedict Cumberbatch would be in the new Star Wars, and it was one of those, not just a random rumor, kind of just like one that was plausible that people for some reason believed, and I was pretty pumped about that. But it looks like that probably won't be the case, but that would be cool if they.
Yeah, I think he actually came out and denied it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that gets built up for whatever reason. I don't know. You know, they drop these hints like, oh well, you know, I'd be interested in doing it, and suddenly that becomes fact. You know, and everybody's like, oh, he's definitely in this. You know, but that would have been cool. But oh well, I'm sure they'll do a good job with it anyway.
Yes, yes, no, I'm actually looking forward to it quite a bit. You know, yeah, episode 7, and then yeah, if Gary touched on it there, the EU with episode 7 coming out, where the EU is going to be situated, and now that they're kind of moving outside of that traditional time frame that Lucasfilm had kind of set, and I know that there's an extensive, you know, storyline in the EU after Return of the Jedi. Um, I will admit I don't know any of it. I never really got into that stuff. Um, I got the comic books a couple of times, and I saw some of like the interim comic books when I was a kid and all that. But so I was never into the EU, and I never really got into the novels or anything like that. And so I will admit I'm completely ignorant of that. I do, however, know that Jared, you're a really big EU fan. Um, Gary, I know you've been into EU. I'm assuming Ed, you must be more knowledgeable than I am.
Ed actually got me kind of more into the EU than anyone.
It's not hard to do.
I can tell you the exact day that I actually got my first EU book, which is pretty bad.
Okay, well, yeah, there we go. So I'm glad we have a panel here because then we can talk about this particular subject. So
yeah, we might need 3 hours for this one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so the announcement that came out that said the EU wasn't going to be canon, that these books, they weren't going to follow these books and this particular storyline and all of that kind of thing. And that they have the story group and all that, and they're going to rebrand some of the really popular books under the Legends titles, and so they're still going to be out there and everything like that. And I know the complaint has always been, you know, well, oh, how can it not be canon and this, that, and the other? And as somebody who was kind of on the outside, I always saw like there were two types of Star Wars. There was canon and then there was EU. I just thought the EU was just, you know, the non-canon fan stuff and, you know, the stuff that kind of came afterward. I do know that in the Clone Wars, the series, they took some things from the EU video games, old novels and stuff like that, Darth Bane, Quinlan Voss, all that, and brought them into it. But, you know, they changed some certain, you know, certain things or what have you. And I'm assuming they're going to probably do the same thing with the new movies. My kind of take on it is that people probably have an easier time with the Clone Wars doing it because it's all stuff that happened in the past, and this is all stuff that they were hoping was going to happen in the future. My thing is isn't it great that you don't know what's going to happen now? So I'll put it out to you guys. That particular question. Do you like it now that you don't know what's going to happen?
I mean, it's got mixed. I mean, I don't know. I've been a big fan of the EU ever since Ed got me reading New Jedi Order, which takes place a number of years after Return of the Jedi. It deals with sort of the next generation, similar to what I presume this new series will deal with. And it's a really good, it's a really good series, and it has a lot of cool stuff that happens after that. Some neat, new characters that are actually well fleshed out that carry the story well, and are actually engaging. So that's what I liked about it. But at the same time, I don't know, I'm a realist. When they said originally we're making a new movie, and everybody went, oh no, what if, are they going to use this or they're not going to use this? I kind of assumed they would use however much they felt was reasonable and off the rest. They even said, this will not necessarily be based on this. And this new announcement where it's not canon or whatever, it's kind of just really just continuing that thought and putting that final nail in the coffin. So I wasn't, crying, in a ball over it or anything like that, but I mean, nobody likes to hear that their favorite content is going to be no longer valid, but essentially canon is it's a subjective thing. Before they had many levels of canon actually. There's like the main canon, which is the movies, essentially anything that Lucas directly creates, so the movies and whatever deals with that. I think the Clone Wars might be that same level, but I'm not sure. It's like very high up there because Lucas had a hand in it. And then there's like a level. There's a few of them, but there's basically a step down, which is sort of like his sanctioned things that are written or created by other people, like the books and that kind of thing. Usually just the books, because usually he kind of has a say in it. There's actually a few plot points that happen in the books because he directed it. He said, I want this to happen, and they said, like, well, okay, we can do that for you. Like, they wanted to do it one way, he wanted to do it another. His creation, it's the final say. So, and then there's some final level, which is kind of just, this is basically on the level of fan fiction, where it's, barely recognizable as canon, but it's still some level of it. So, I don't know. It's to be expected. They're going to make a new movie, and it's hopefully going to be awesome. But you can't expect them to take everything and carry it over. Hopefully, they'll take some of our favorite elements and bring it on through. I'd like to see one of the main things I like about the things that happen afterwards. Ed and I both love these moments where Luke just becomes an unbridled badass. I mean, like, you see him in Return of the Jedi. By the end of Return of the Jedi, he's like a badass. He just beat Darth Vader, and then took down the Empire, all that stuff, and he's just a tank. And then you can just imagine the extrapolation of that by the time, 30 years later, when he's like Obi-Wan's age. The guy's just he's just a maelstrom of Force energy. He's just awesome. He's just awesome at everything he does. So I kind of hope we see a little bit of that. But we'll see. They're going to do it with the constraints that they have, and hopefully they'll just do it well with a well-executed plot and some character development. That's all I ask for.
Very good. Gentlemen? Nothing to add?
I was my first expanded universe book was Heir to the Empire, and I'll admit I read it well after it came out. I won it at a school bingo in an after-school program on a half day in March in the 4th grade. Okay, so there's the story. Won't get to the specific date because anything more than that, I'll just say safe and sound for Jared, and he will cry inside. So I won bingo, and I'm going through the prize pile. You get to choose your own prize. And I'm going through this prize pile, and I'm like, this stuff is all crap. And then I see this cover, blue, with an old guy, lightning bolts shooting out of his fingertips, and oh my God, it says Star Wars at the top. What is this? I must read it. And I picked it up and I read it, and I never stopped reading Star Wars Expanded Universe novels. And then they came out with this announcement. There's going to be an Episode 7. Disney's going to do it. And I went, Disney? Oh. But then I thought, Disney made Marvel, and I do like the Marvel movies. So, okay, give it a chance. Then they said, okay, we're not going to use Expanded Universe. And at first I was like, no! You must use Expanded Universe. And then I went, but, whatever. And now it's kind of looking like they're going to use the skeletal structure, or at least the family arcs. You're probably going to have the Solo family. If you haven't read, you should be able to figure out who that is from Return of the Jedi. And then there's supposed to be 3 kids there. Maybe we'll only get 2, but hey, they're using the basic family structures, it looks like, which would be great. I would be so thrilled with that if they just use the basic family concept so that we have characters that we're maybe familiar with the names and they change what they actually do. That would be great, because I would like to be surprised. I don't want to go see a movie of a book that I've read and decide that, like every other thing, the book was better than the movie. Give me a movie of something that I haven't read so that I can't make the decision. The book was better. Well, the book's always better for me because it happens the way I want it to in my head. The movie is pretty concrete. So personally, I went from one extreme of, oh no, to, okay. That was me.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's, I see that happening a lot, I think that's what's going to happen. I mean, it's, you're never going to please everybody, and, you know, we were all excited about the prequels and everything like that, and then we got a little disappointed with those. Um, so, yeah, I mean, I will say this: I am extremely happy that Lucas is not directing. I'm just saying that the best moments in the Star Wars is when he's kind of like producing and giving like ideas and other people. Like that's why I really love the Clone Wars, is because it's almost like it's like you can tell it's done by people like us who are just like, oh, this is totally something we would have done with our Star Wars figures, you know. Like when we were trying to like imagine, oh yeah, we totally would have. I would totally would have done that. Yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah, you know. And so that's what's been fun for me. Um, and so yeah, I'm excited to see what's going to happen. Right? I like the I like the director. I know we can get into that because I know Gary does not. You know, I actually think J.J. Abrams does, you know, does a fair. I liked his Star Trek reboots. I know, you know, some people don't, but I thought they were great. But so I'm pretty confident about that. But as far as the EU goes, do you have an opinion on that one, Gary?
Yeah, I certainly do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting thing because, I mean, being both a fan of Star Wars and a long-time fan of Star Trek as well, Star Trek was very fortunate in that it had a huge amount of canon. You had, 10 movies, about 5 different TV shows, cartoons, I mean, you name it, there was a huge amount of canon for people to draw upon. There was an expanded universe in that as well, a very, very big one. You know, there were stories written about Cisco and Deep Space Nine and Janeway and just about everything you could possibly imagine, right the way down to the Klingon Academy. I mean, there was a huge amount of EU on top of a huge amount of canon stuff. And J.J. Abrams came along and pretty much put a pin in all of it, which kind of upset me quite a lot. Um, and having seen what he did, I mean, I personally don't like his reboots. I appreciate I'm probably in a serious minority here, but I really don't. I don't like what he's done with it. And then, of course, I mean, when I found out they were doing a Star Wars Episode 7, I'm like, yes, finally, fantastic, because I know Lucas had joked with people that he'd originally intended it to be a triple trilogy. There was some story about he'd written it on a napkin or something in a restaurant, and he kind of joked to somebody, oh, yes, it was originally going to be a triple trilogy. And then he sort of said, well, I don't want to spend the rest of my life making Star Wars. So there was a lot of ideas floating around, and then, of course, we found out there was actually going to make an Episode 7. Then I found out J.J. Abrams was involved, and my heart literally sank, having seen Star Trek. And then, as if that wasn't bad enough, then I discovered that he's putting a pin in the EU. And I sort of wonder what else he might decide to get rid of. And to be honest, I mean, he could do it with Star Trek because Gene Roddenberry wasn't around anymore. So the original creator wasn't actually there to kind of go, slow your roll, hang on a minute. George Lucas is. So I'm hoping that Abrams does a brilliant job of directing, and all the things that he's really good at. And then, when he comes up with some crazy idea like, we're going to get rid of X, Y, and Z, Lucas kind of goes, no, I'm the creator, and we're not doing that. I really hope that Lucas holds on to that power, because my fear, which could be an irrational fear, but it is, my fear is that we will end up with something that bears no resemblance whatsoever. And I think if he is given free rein the way he was with Star Trek, that's where he might decide for creative reasons to go.
You see, that's the thing. See, that's the thing. You say that he put, with the Star Trek movies, that he put a pin in all this. Now, I grew up with Star Wars. Man, I've been watching Star Wars or Star Trek since since I was, God, since I could watch TV, because it was always on Saturday afternoons.
Yeah,
Um,
same here.
you know, and so I mean, I grew up with all that stuff, and I thought he kept an enormous amount of the original material that, quite frankly, if I were rebooting it, I would have thrown out, like the
Yeah, but
uniforms,
I mean,
you
seriously,
know,
the first, you know,
the it was like that. So I'm hoping that the same kind of treatment will happen, because it's almost like when I was a kid growing up, if we used the Star Trek analogy and was watching Star Trek, I was always using my imagination, saying, "Yeah, I know that's not a cardboard box." Okay, I'm using my imagination, and I know it's not a cardboard box that isn't shaking every time they press a button. You know, I know that wall didn't go boom 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 when he walked through the door. I had to do all of that kind of stuff, and then when with the new Star Trek reboots, it was almost like oh, you see, now this is almost kind of how, I mean, it wasn't exactly how I imagined it, but it's like, you see, now there's no walls, shaking around and everything like that, and it kind of brought a reality to it, and I thought it still felt really, really tangible, and I would really like that to be brought to Episode 7, because the things about the prequels was in the first trilogy, like Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, as I know them, it was a gritty, like dark, not dark, like lighting dark. Everything was grimy, used. Nothing worked. The Millennium Falcon was constantly breaking down. You know, it was a real visceral, thing. It had a reality to it. And in the prequels, none of that was true. Everything was, I mean, for crying, I think it's probably best exemplified in the Princess's ship, which is like this mirror-polished SR-71 looking thing, which is, I don't know, man.
That was kind of the point, though. I mean, if you think about the Naboo and what she was supposed to be representing, I mean, these were supposed to be a kind of regal, idyllic, kind of perfect people almost. So it's not really surprising that she had a wardrobe that was more expensive than her ship, which was
no. I'm not talking about her
silver.
wardrobe. I'm talking about the ship.
Yeah, but I'm saying
the ship looks like it came out of a gumball machine. It didn't look like a real ship to me, a real ship that comes in and out of atmospheres, scorch marks on it.
I had an issue with that at first too. I kind of went. That was one of my first warning signs of the prequels when I went, why is everything look so much cleaner and more modern when you're going back in time? And then I kind of realized it gets a little bit hand-waved, I think, in sort of a meta sense, by the fact that you're in sort of a better era, supposedly. It's sort of a, it's like the Renaissance, whereas like the original trilogy is more of a later sort of like, repressed, the empires. It kind of makes sense in a symbolic sense because the empire, kind of suppresses that individuality, that creativity, and, everything's, people are going, there's poverty, there's more crime, even though it's supposed to be more secure, like, the fact that they're cracking down so hard is causing these opportunities and these things to it. So like it kind of makes sense in that way, but I also totally understand what you mean, because from a production point of view, the original series benefited by its lower budget and its sort of like limited capabilities, because everything felt more grounded, more real, because they had to use real sets, they had to use real things. Everything wasn't just a green screen, I mean, when you look at like behind the scenes things on the prequels and how many like scenes are just shot with nothing around, I mean, we think the acting's bad, but Jesus, they weren't acting against anything. I don't know how they even managed to do what they did. They're just, I mean, it's one guy running around in a green set swinging his lightsaber. Like, I mean, that's...
I will say this. There was a little bit more green screen and all of that and compositing in the prequels. But I'm sorry, because I was into the special effects when I was a kid. That was one of the things about the original that they said even about that. It's so hard acting in front of a screen. They composited all those speeder bikes and all of that kind of stuff. So, you know, they've been working in front of the green screen all this time. And I think I would be able to like, say that more about the prequels if it were not true for like every planet that they went to. Like Tatooine looked like it had been swept, and you know, and then of course in the Clone Wars, I think they actually got more of that feeling, but they still got that there was, you know, junkers and, you know, crap just all around there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as far as like anything computer generated goes, I'm fine with CGI. I'm fine with computer generated. I'm fine with special effects. I don't really like them done in excess. Like they shouldn't be done with everything. They should be done with like, you know, have a scene, like a real scene and a real set, and then insert what you need. You know, rather than say, you know, oh, we'll just have the actor and then sort of create everything around him. It pulls you out of the scene. It makes it feel less real. The tension's not there because you're not thinking, oh, this is a real guy on a real ship. He's gonna die. Like it's like, oh, look at these like CGI ships twirling around and shooting lasers at each other and da da da. Like, it's just the style nowadays, really. It's that whole.
The thing. These were the exact same complaints that were given to the original Star Wars when I was growing up. You know, it's just a bunch of special effects and lasers. Pew, 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 pew. That's all you want. You just want explosions and ships going everywhere. I mean, I think it's plagued this whole genre of science fiction because it needs that. But I think where special effects come in, you know, everybody makes fun of the J.J. Abrams lens flare, but the thing about what the lens flare does is it's kind of like we can call it what do you call it, who directed the Avengers? Help me out.
Joss Whedon.
The Joss Whedon camera shake, right? where the you know doing that, or the Battlestar Galactica, where is the ship? You know, it's like there's a mistake that's happening on film, right? So it kind of like breaks that fourth wall for a second, right? So like when you're watching the ship in a shaky camera, it almost feels like you're on the ground looking through a telescope and you're searching for this little ship and all that kind of thing. But yeah, so I mean, I think I'm looking. I want to see like more realism, you know, brought into it, very much like the original ones. And I think what it comes down to is just don't do it for the effect's sake. Do whatever you want to do, but don't. The thing about the remixes, you know, when they redid the original ones, it threw all those digital elements in there. The digital elements, it's like they took center stage. It's like in the Family Guy parody when they did that little dancing elephant that goes across this thing. I mean, it was totally like that. If you know what I mean.
Absolutely. There's actually, as always, there's a mini sidebar conversation going on over here.
Yes.
And we're discussing J.J. Abrams because, as far as I'm aware, the way a movie works is you have writers, you have producers, and you have directors. And J.J. was a director, so he didn't actually decide the content of the movies that he directs. He only describes how that content is going to be portrayed to an audience. So George Lucas's title right now, and of course this could change at any point, is as creative input and producer. And that's pretty much it. He's not on the board with Disney, so he doesn't have a lot to say. He sold all of his rights. So he gets creative input, and that's pretty much it. JJ will execute a script that's written by whoever the writers are. Now, there's some rumors that some old writers are going to be brought on. I'm hoping that by old writers, they mean Empire Strikes Back and not Attack of the Clones.
Well, who's in the picture? Kasdan, wasn't it?
I don't know. Oh yeah, look at the picture. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's the original ones, like the actual original trilogy.
Yeah,
writers.
yeah, no,
That's
it's
people from Empire, I believe.
Yeah, it's
Yay, my favorite.
it's. I swear, we're looking at the intertubes right now.
No, seriously. All of us have like multiple pages open, and we're literally. I'm looking at the gray and white picture of everybody sitting around in a circle, and I can
Yeah,
see
he's in the
Mark
back.
giving somebody the stink eye across the room, and I love it.
Yeah.
He's in the back.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Peter Mayhew, producer.
Hold on, it's on the page.
At any rate,
Yes.
you know, ignoring JJ's content, you look at anything he's produced, Lost, the new Star Treks, forget what's in them. Look at how he did it. Forget what he did. Look at how he did it. If you look at the 2 new Star Trek movies from a complete visual and acting execution standpoint, the acting's phenomenal. The visuals are phenomenal. They're really, like, the camera angles, the use of the camera, the lens flare. Some people don't like it. I think that it was used effectively. Maybe overused in some people's, used effectively. He's got new ideas. He's going to at least push the boundary. We're going to get something we don't expect.
And Lawrence Kasdan is the writer in that picture. So that's the writer for Empire and Return of the Jedi.
Well, we'll just cite him with Empire because Return has got other problems.
Hey. The first, everything but the Ewoks was great. And if you made the Ewoks maybe a little creepier, I'd even go with the Ewoks. But
Well, they were.
Ewoks are pretty creepy. They put on people's skulls as instruments at the end of that movie. Everybody forgets
that. That is true. That is true. But you kind of missed that fact because they look like teddy bears.
That's my favorite part. And they were cannibals, Gary. You're absolutely right. They were
cannibals. I didn't realize that as a kid.
Luke and Han.
I didn't realize that as a kid, but I didn't put 2 and 2 together. They try to eat Luke and Han, and then later in the movie they're drumming on all those helmets, and I was like, oh, look at that, there's helmets.
All the dead bodies from the
years
Death
later.
Star people. They ate them.
I was like, oh, God.
Well, they're
worse
technically not cannibals because they're not eating Ewoks.
That's true.
Well,
we don't think you were doing.
Carnivorous at least. It was worse than that. They were going to serve Han and Luke as main course at a banquet in honor of C-3PO.
Right. Yeah, he's sitting on the he's sitting in the read through, so I'm assuming that he at least put some of those words down, and I'm happy with that. If that's the case,
I love it.
Yeah, and I think the Clone Wars and what we can do too is talk about the other great thing that's coming up that I'm really excited for, which is Rebels. All of this new stuff that's being done by fans like us. So it's almost like yes, now we can see Star Wars going where we wanted it to. We're not having to look at just strange space rabbits doing strange cartoony stuff, and even I gotta say, even the Clone Wars even did redeem Jar Jar to a certain extent by making him even hated within the universe, and that final season on Netflix, just phenomenal Star Wars everything about that.
Yeah, I watched that final season on Netflix, and for those of you who haven't watched it, plug your ears quick. Yoda goes on a journey, and if you've read the EU, there is a self-conscious planet, and that's all I'll say. There is a planet that is basically like the creator of the Force, and it can move through hyperspace and all this other stuff. At any rate, Yoda goes on this journey, and I'm watching the Clone Wars, and I'm going, oh my God, is he there? Is he? And the people, there's all the masks, and is that the planet? And I'm going, oh my God, did they just slip that in and make it canon, but didn't give it a name? Because that would be awesome. I don't know if anybody else had that thought because anyone's read as much EU as I have. I mean, I'm actually sitting here with 6 copies of this sitting next to me, the Star Wars It's written off of, based on George Lucas's original rough draft. And if you've looked at my name tag right now, it says Jedi Bendu. If you don't know what that means, I'm sorry. Your life is sadder than mine. Or mine's sad, I don't know.
Right. But yes, I mean, the Clone Wars, which I think people denounced for, I denounced it for a while because they, what's his name, who actually is an alum of the same art school that I graduated from, who did Samurai Jack and all that, did the Clone Wars. These really awesome, like traditional cell animation Clone Wars shorts, miniseries, and those are really cool. And then they kind of scrapped those, and then put out the new Clone Wars, and I was like, oh, they made it a kids movie, a kids thing, blah blah blah. And then I watched it. I don't know why, but I I don't know if I was like saw it in a hotel or something like that. But I watched one episode, and I was like, huh, well, that ain't bad. And I just started getting them on Netflix. Before streaming, just on DVD, and that's how I got hooked. Because it's totally like that, and I'm really looking forward to Rebels because that's happening between Episode 3, Episode 4. So I'm that means Darth Vader exists and is the major baddie of the galaxy. So he may be making a couple of appearances, and who doesn't want to see that? But anyway, yes. So, how about any Rebels excitement or opinions?
I actually haven't heard anything about this. Can you give me some details? Maybe some other people haven't heard anything about it.
Yeah. No. They ended the Clone Wars, and now they're doing another animated series, Rebels, which is
oh, sweet.
Yes. I can't believe you didn't see. It's all good. It's going to be on Disney XL. But now that they're in it with Netflix, and Disney's in it with Netflix, if you have Netflix and you have Netflix streaming, you'll see all kinds of Disney movies popping up all the time, all kinds of stuff. And I am a fan of Disney, even though it's anybody that's a fan of Disney has a love-hate relationship with the mouse. But there's historically, Disney's been very tight with all of its stuff, where they would release them every now and then, and you'd still go to the theater. I mean, growing up, I remember still going to theater to see Disney movies, and now all of this stuff is popping up on Netflix, and it's great because Disney now owns the Star Wars stuff. So I'm hoping that stuff's going to be hitting Netflix as well. So yeah, Rebels is one of the things I'm really, really excited for, because that's going to be an ongoing awesomeness. And I've seen some things where they've showed some battles with TIE fighters already and everything. So, it's going to be good. All right. So
I kind of like how it's kind of playing that ragtag bunch of different people. It's like that token. I don't know. I guess it plays upon tropes that like both the original trilogy invoked, with kind of like the smuggler, and there's like all these different types of characters. It actually deliberately tries to pull from that, I think, because it kind of has like the Jedi, and it has like the kid who's like still learning, and then it has like kind of the smuggler and this kind of thing. So it's almost like an original trilogy Firefly kind of thing, with all these different characters and their different sort of like specialties, which I think has a lot of potential. Whenever you do that, I think it's a really cool.
And it's the same thing with like Star Trek. You have any type of an ensemble cast. I think it goes to a Jungian principle of storytelling, where when we tell stories with these characters and with a ship and everything like that, the ship or whatever is yourself, and each of those characters is a segment of your personality, and this is why we connect with these ensemble casts and these like Firefly and all that kind of stuff, because we see these aspects of ourselves, or at least how we want to see ourselves and all of that kind of thing. So yeah, it gets. I think it gets right in there, and it gets right back to the original series and its connection with Joseph Campbell and all that stuff. So yes, all right, all right. So what else is going on, and what else can we go into here? I'm sure we have something.
There's an infinite amount with the EU. I mean, oh, good lord. Jared was talking about the different levels of canon. Here's a topic for you. I like to use the reverse canon rule. I don't know if anybody else even knows about this, but the stuff that George originally wrote for the first draft, by the way, Luke was supposed to be a girl in the first draft. If you didn't know that, just so you know, Luke was originally supposed to be a chick. Fun stuff. That's the stuff I consider canon, because I think that the older it is, the more original it is. That's what should be canon. But that's me, because I'm crazy. So I like the original stuff, and the newer stuff that comes out, I look at as being more like oh, that's fun. That's fun. But that's me. So does anybody else have like a weird way of looking at the canon besides like the movies are canon, the TV shows are canon, the Christmas specials are canon? EU, comic books, novels, and Lucasfilm approved media is sub-canon, and fan fiction and personal writings are non-canon. Anybody have another weird way of looking at it on the panel at least?
Well, when I was a kid, ever since I was a kid, I should say, I still do this, is I always try to place things all in the same universe. So I have to come up with some way. So the way I look at everything is that it's just like history. This is somebody telling you about something. I mean, it says right at the beginning of the movie, long time ago. So somebody had to have gotten the story wrong at some point, right? So these are all just guesses or whatever, and it's all kind of like belying, another truth. Nobody will know what really happened, but here is a version, and therefore all versions are fine, and you can just use them all, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's the funny thing, because I don't really have a weird way of looking at canon as such. Although I love the idea of somebody got it wrong somewhere. I mean, you could argue that whole point for Star Trek Enterprise. In fairness, when they're sort of watching it on a holodeck in the final episode. But I mean, one of the things I've always done is when I've not been particularly happy with the way they took a certain character, like, or the way that a character ended, like, for example, killing Dooku 5 minutes into episode 3. I've always sort of thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if there was kind of a way to sort of think him out of that situation, and a way by which he doesn't get his head chopped off by Anakin Skywalker. And funnily enough, there's been some examples in EU that have given a hint as to how that might possibly be a thing. In so much that there's mention in one of the books of, I think it's in Dark Rendezvous, of him using clones of himself, which is a kind of interesting idea. So I mean, it's more a kind of, in a sense, turning canon into a bit of a fanfic kind of thing. But again, that's just my sort of particular brand of weirdness, I guess.
Well, I don't think you even have to go to the AU. They did it in the Clone Wars. They brought Darth Maul back.
He wasn't a clone of himself, though. He was his real self minus his legs.
Yeah. Didn't you see those? I mean, that's like probably the coolest story arc in the whole series. Is that whole return of Darth Maul. It goes through what? 3 seasons? The last 3 seasons it goes through.
Which was cool as well, because Sam Witwer, who did Starkiller, actually voiced him, which I thought was very, very cool.
Yeah. So no, they totally did that with and I think it was Lucas's. It might have been Lucas's daughter. It was like, you know what, Dad, you really screwed up killing Darth Maul. I'm just gonna bring him back from the dead. How about that? Ha ha ha. That's what it seemed like, at least.
Yeah, I'm guilty in certain circles of doing the conspiracy theory thing, mostly in Game of Thrones, not so much in Star Wars, but I do kind of the same thing, because Game of Thrones is much more that way, where like there's a lot of theories about this person's still alive, and this, because they love killing off characters, as it's a well-known fact. But as far as Star Wars goes, as far as canon, I don't know. I kind of focus on what I like. I don't really put a whole lot of emphasis on this is this specific. At this point, if I watch the movies, I'm going to consider the EU as like an alternate timeline. I'm just going to consider that. A lot of people make their own canon. Mentally they go at the end of New Jedi Order, it goes into a short trilogy and then into Legacy of the Force. And in Legacy of the Force, they start sort of, I don't want to say retconning because it's not the right word, because they don't technically change what was in New Jedi Order, but they do change a lot of the way the characters think. And it's simply because in New Jedi Order they move away from Lucas's very, very simplistic vision of good and evil, and they start viewing the Force in different ways. Not much of a spoiler, but I'm not really going to go into deep detail because we don't have that much time left. But the point is that they start viewing the Force in different ways, and Lucas kind of went, no, that's not what you do. The Force is the Force. There's a light side and there's a dark side, and that's it. And so, Legacy of the Force, they just kind of changed everything back, and they just kind of abandoned that arc, and then they made a bunch of controversial changes. Killed some characters off, made some characters do some, interesting things. Cool arc, very cool arc, very neat to read, very interesting to read as far as different types of villains and stuff. But a lot of people condemn that as not canon. They say I don't consider that canon because I think all that's out of character. It's all executive meddling. Lucas came in and told them what to do. And as a result, a lot of people consider that not viable as canon or whatever, which is, that's their choice. They can pretend like in their head whatever happens. They can pretend like Luke, does whatever. It doesn't matter. It's kind of like a subjective thing. Is canon? I think. It's whatever you consider the most sort of consistent with the timeline, which is obviously going to be different for every person.
Yeah, and the timeline, I've got like a couple of like reference books or whatever on that kind of thing, and the timeline, I've noticed that they go from like the beginning of the Jedi all the way through the first Sith Wars and all that kind of stuff. There's thousands of years that are going by, and it's just like, I'm not sure if it's obvious that they're trying to give themselves enough time so that they're not, each author is not beholden to the to something that the other authors on over this side of the story or this side of the story have. He goes, oh well, it's just a different time. They don't do that there. And I've always thought, and I don't know if I'll throw this here. Anybody else notice that in Star Wars, and it's getting a little better now with so many different people being on it now, it's like there's this strange uniformity of all of the technology, and it never seems to improve.
It's if I can just jump in on that, because it's a funny thing. One of my major nerdy things is starships. It was a big thing for me in Star Trek. It's been a big thing for me in Star Wars as well. And that is really, really true. If you look back at the sort of, the kind of sacking of Coruscant and the Malgus era, and, you look at the Sith battle cruisers, the Harrower class, you could put one of those things next to an Imperial class Star Destroyer from 3,000 years later, and apart from a slight size difference, design-wise, they're brothers, and that is one thing that's gone on throughout. Is the design lineages of the ships. 3,000, 5,000 years makes no difference. They look virtually the same. It's kind of crazy, really.
Right? Yeah. The it's I don't know. It's almost like you've always got a 1962 Stingray. Who do we? Just Warnock his.
Holy crap! It's a Force ghost.
Right.
Good evening.
We don't have
The
video
sounds
on
of
it.
waves.
Can anybody actually hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Yep.
We can't see you.
No, I don't have great bandwidth. I don't have my camera turned on right now.
Okay.
Just say use the Force, Luke.
Use the Force, Luke. Does that feel better, Ed?
I feel so good right now.
Yes, there you go.
He's transmitting from beyond.
Yes.
Greetings from
Vornock is giving us a little is coming in from Glee Anselm here. So how are you doing? How's everything out there?
I'm living in a tropical island paradise. My only regret right now is I don't always have great internet. I really don't have much to complain about out here. This is really amazing.
Well, very good.
I don't want to interrupt the flow of the show. How are you all doing?
Oh, we're nerding out here, so.
Oh, cool.
We've been. I don't know if you've heard all of the recent news with the Star Wars stuff, but.
No, I can barely keep up with anything down here. The work that has brought me here is incredibly consuming. It's incredibly rewarding, but I am really busy these days.
Yeah. Well, you'll have to watch the show. You'll have to go back and watch this show then, and because we talk about it. All right. So, where were we? We were talking about. I don't know. We were talking about Rebels. We were talking about. Well, how about this? How about we end the show? We'll go down. We'll go down the panel here and name the number one thing you're excited for in Star Wars land right now. Artorias, go.
I'm excited for potentially a new view on the Force that we have never even considered before.
Very good. All right. Arcanus.
To be honest, I think the number one thing I'm excited about is the idea of having more Star Wars, really. More stories, more characters, more development, a bigger universe, and just the whole thing, coming back to life and us being able to live through it. I mean, I think that's the thing for me.
Yep. Definitely there. Jared, how about you? All the stuff we've been talking about.
I'm excited about everything, but I think the thing that I'm most pumped for is actually going to see the new Star Wars in theaters. Just being able to gonna go grab Ed, and we're just gonna nerd out in the theater, and it's gonna be terrible and wonderful and
So true.
Just a nerdy.
Yeah, I hope it will not be, because I was when Phantom Menace came out, I was geeked beyond all belief to see this. I mean, we waited outside in line. I was excited. We met Darth Maul, Ray Park, and all that stuff. We got into the theater. We were sitting there, and like as soon as the Pneumonians started talking, everybody started looking at each other like, "What the?" And then it started. People just started trickling out, and I'm like, "Oh no!" So I am a little afraid for that, but I am still excited. I would have to say, if what I am excited most for is Rebels, because yeah, I'm really looking forward to that, because it brings, I don't know. I think the reason we've talked about this in the beginning of the series, the Jedi were the rebels. They were the ones on the outskirts. They were the outlaws, and then in the prequels they become the establishment, which is a cool little twist, I admit, and I think they explored it really well in the Clone Wars and all that. So I'm looking forward to getting back to Jedi's being rebels. All right. So Well, that about brings us to the end here. So I will end it here for us all. We'll just thank our panelists here, Master Artorias, Gary, our Count Arcadis, Vorna coming in at the last minute. Good to see you again. Well, almost hear you again at least. All right. Master Nero, Jared, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for coming in, watching us after the fact, doing whatever you did. And if you're going out and doing something for May the 4th, have a really good time. And so from all of us here at Terra Prime, happy sabering, and May the 4th be with you.